Welcome to week 2 of our class. Thanks so much, all of you who participated in the discussion. It was a great time together, it looked like, and I was happy to be able to look over your shoulder. Let me just make a couple of comments regarding some of the discussion. Um, Several of you noticed how many times in this material God emphasizes the importance of faith. I was surprised that nobody commented on Genesis 22, that passage where God instructs Abraham to offer his son, his only son, Isaac. That's a troubling passage, and much attention has been given to it, but it is a beautiful picture of what God requires from his servants. There have been times, of course, in your life and mine when God has called upon us to give up something that was valuable to us. Certainly nothing as valuable as a son, but we do recognize that we walk by faith and not by sight. That's always been God's way. Others of you noticed as well the way that God chooses underdogs to serve him. I was struck by the fact that God blessed Hagar, the Egyptian slave girl, with a son when Sarah was barren. I was impressed that God spoke to Hagar, appeared to her twice, when he was not appearing to Abraham and Sarah. In fact, I'm struck by the fact that of all the women that we meet in those early chapters in Genesis, all of them are barren, except for the slave girls. Hagar is able to have a child. Uh, Bilhah and Zilpah are able to have children, but the the women of the family are not able to. They're barren. It's just a picture of the way God chooses the underdogs, and I think he still is in the practice of doing that. I think that when we look at our own lives and when we look at the way God has used the church, we recognize that he's just looking for availability. It's not ability. That he can provide. So remember that picture of God asking Moses, "What do you have in your hand?" In fact, that's the section we're going to be looking at in this week's workshop. This picture of the Exodus, how God gets Israel out of Egypt and then begins to get Egypt out of Israel. Before we leave Genesis, I am going to post that PowerPoint that I talked about, comparing the creation accounts of Genesis and those of Mesopotamia. And the reason I'm doing this, you're not required to look at this, but if you were curious as to how these creation accounts compared to one another, I just wanted to give you that as a resource. For this week, I want us to focus in on the book of Exodus, as I said, and I want you to do a couple of things. In the textbook, there is a map that shows the possible routes that lay open to Israel as it vacated Egypt and headed toward Canaan. The quickest route was up along the Mediterranean Sea. There was another route that cut through the desert and would have come up from the southern part of the country through the Negev. But God chose a different route, a much longer route. In fact, he didn't even take them to Canaan first at all. He took them down to Mount Sinai, and that's where the book of Exodus finishes, actually, in Mount Sinai. But I do want you to see that map and just be able to picture how God led them out. I also want you to do a little research. Google tabernacle, Old Testament tabernacle, and you're going to see Google images for the tabernacle, and you're going to see all kinds of recreation, artistic and actual physical recreations of the tabernacle. I'd love for you to pick some of the more interesting scenes that you find, more interesting objects, pictures, websites, and upload them to our class if you can. Just paste the link into a post and give us a chance to see what you found. I'm sure you'll be delighted to see. If you're anything like me, it really helps to have those things to be able to visualize them. Now, this week, remember, you're going to be making a post by Thursday. The sooner the better. And then you're going to be responding to another post. You can do multiple responses. Some of you did several, 4 responses. That's wonderful. Earlier in the week is great. That way it gives us more material for us to discuss. If you have any questions that you want to make sure you get an answer to, feel free to email them to me directly. Otherwise, I'm going to, for the most part, allow the discussion to continue as I did this week. I did pop in there once or twice um, just to clarify something, but I love the way that you're helping each other to work through this. So, on you go with workshop 2. Remember to do the reading material and then read the material in the Bible and do your post and do your response. And I look forward to watching over your shoulder as this week progresses. God bless you as you experience the Exodus.